Okay.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Rob with All In Together. I have Josh, one of my testing partners with me. He just cast Pro Tour Las Vegas on Lyath, and I wanted to ask him some questions about his deck.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So this is, I think you're the first person to cash. Well, actually, there were a couple early lists. I know they did pretty well, but to cash a tier 4, I think you're the first person to do that, which is awesome.
I know, like, there was, I think it was Jason Rolfe top-aided Calling, and that was actually, like, one of my early inspirations when I was building the deck.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't remember if you top-aided. I can double-check later. We can fact-check me. But that's awesome that like you're able to kind of grow on that, and I know the change of Talk a Big Game probably helped a lot. But you've had a lot of success with Acilio historically, so it made you swap off of Acilio to play Lyath.
Yeah, a couple things. So one is that, Talk a Big Game unban was exciting, but the other piece that sort of unlocked this deck and got me comfortable playing it again was Victor LLing.
Mm-hmm.
Victor was just an absolutely atrocious matchup on like every axis, and the deck was pretty unplayable while Victor was dominant. So I got kind of excited with the unban plus Victor LLing. And on top of that, when I like tested Acilio some, like Jarl felt unwinnable to me. It felt very like out of my hands of just like, do I flip the good cards or do I miss?
Mm-hmm.
So like the latest versions of Acilio just weren't for me, and I started testing this more and more and having more fun, and got to a place where I felt pretty confident against most of the current field.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a hero a lot of people aren't expecting or like too practiced into. So I think it definitely gives you some matchup points for sure.
Yeah, I definitely had a lot of people at the Pro Tour like reading all my cards or, not sure what plan they were expected. I know some people said that they had only seen the Fatigue Lyath lists, which gave me a lot of equity.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people aren't prepared to play and to leave them hanging, because that's an absolute blowout if you can line it up right.
Yes, it's especially like some of the decks right now are super vulnerable to it. Both the versions of Acilio it can be really brutal against, especially like the spells Acilio leave them hanging in response to Aether Flare. It's just a total blowout sometimes.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal. Can they still like snap back in response to it, or do they just don't get the buff?
I think you can play snapback, but you won't get the buff if you do it before the Aether Flare.
And then strike twice, it has to hit first, or something has to hit first, or is it just a cast? But yeah, okay.
Yep.
That makes sense. So that's pretty powerful if you can hit strike twice. Cool.
There's a lot of other equity out there. It's one of the best tools to making Valda playable, because you can play it in response to Seismic Surge pops. If a Jarl doesn't know what they're doing and is activating gloves aggressively, you can really catch them off guard.
Absolutely. Yeah, any kind of like early turn actions to like clear cards in hand, to try to pitch faster. That makes sense. So should we start by walking through the equipment here?
Yeah, we can just go from the top.
Perfect. I think it makes sense to start with our new weapon that you got in Omens. How is this spell compared to Titan's Fist?
It's way more flexible. The raw, like, it isn't a super raw powerful. Like, it's like 2 value plus 1 on hit for 2 costs, which is like very whatever. But the flexibility of having only a 2 cost weapon in this deck is really nice. It like keeps you from bricking hands. The other pattern that it's opened up that has felt really strong is playing a lot more buffs that can go on your weapon. It means you don't have to draw attacks every hand. Previous versions of the deck, if you like missed on your attacks, your hands were really bricky.
That makes sense. And it also seems like it opens up your blue base a bit, but it seems like you're still playing a lot of these 3 cost blues, like Imposing, Power Play, and Tear Asunder.
Yeah, you still play some of the good ones, but it definitely does leave you a little bit more flexible. It makes putting the new Talk a Big Game in there a little easier. But it also like helps save you too when you like miss on blues as well, right? Pitching a red and a Tunic counter to Maul in a pinch is like game saving sometimes.
That makes sense. It also like lets you pitch stack in a way, because like if you're pitch stacking the red, it's like it's much less painful. Like if you needed to set up like some kind of buff towards the end of the game, or if you like set up like a cruel ambition with an escalate violence, that seems pretty powerful. Right. Okay.
Yeah, there's definitely some value there. Like keeping, we'll get to it later. Exude confidence in the deck is really important in slower matchups.
Yeah. So on one hand you have the Maul, and then on the other hand you have the Rampart of the Ram's Head. This seems like a huge kind of value piece to kind of play with your hero power. You want to talk about how impactful it is?
Yeah, Rampart is just so good in this deck. It like plays so well with the pattern of activate Lyath on your opponent's turn, pitch a blue, pay 1 extra to Rampart, and that lets you essentially, you know, transform back into a normal hero cost curve where you can block effectively and, like, you know, have 3 cards plus 4 block or 2 cards plus 7 block.
Hell yeah. All right. So we have the shield, the weapon, and then how about the hat? Two-Face is, I think, a card not everyone has seen because it came out pretty recently.
Yeah, the hat is flexible. If Two-Face, there are a lot of decks Two-Face doesn't do much against, and versus those, you do have a skull cap you can just play. But there are so many like aggressive go wide decks in the format or attack react decks in the format. And being able to, like, if you suspect an attack reaction is coming, or a codex is coming, or a Thigh or an Acilio is threatening a big turn, being able to disrupt those huge turns can be often like a 4 or 5 value on your hat.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a pseudo flush bag.
Yeah. The one other place that I found it really valuable is also, weirdly enough, in slower or more fatigue matchups. What you can do is, if your opponent's like keeping 1 card in hand going into one of your big turns, you put Two-Faced in front of their attack, trying to strip the D-react that they're holding.
That makes sense. Yeah, basically, just like if they're on like a fatigue, you should like have a bad blue instead of like your staunch response.
Exactly.
Yeah, that seems sick. Cool. So you're a guardian that gets to play Snapdragon Scalers, and it's not just like just for E-Strike.
Yes. Snapdragon Scaler is very good at fixing hands. There's a lot of like awkward 0-cost attacks that, if you draw in multiple, don't do that much, and being able to fix those hands is huge. The other thing it does is it lets you also end your attacking turns on a 2 steps ahead, which can be really important as part of your setup.
That makes sense. So you just put pressure and then convert that last card still. It also seems really like impactful with something like a Mocking Blow. Like if you're able to like hit him with hammer. I guess you can't Snap's hammer, but like if you hit him with like a cut a long story short, get the damage, and then you're able to trigger a Mocking Blow.
Yes, that's a really huge attack pattern when you can pull it off. Is like, if you have a Mocking Blow in hand and you're already sending 1 huge attack, being able to set yourself up for the having more life boo trigger can be really powerful. There's also some other like cute patterns in the deck, like escalate violence into battered, beaten, and broken.
Oh, that's sick.
Is one play pattern that comes up a fair amount, where you need the 3 mites from the escalate violence to turn on battered, beaten, and broken. So things like that can be very powerful.
That's sick. All right. Yeah, that's cool. Like, we actually could like make use of Snapdragons in a pretty impactful way. We can talk to Tunic, but I think Tunic kind of speaks for itself.
Yep. Yeah, everyone knows what Tunic is. It's just as good here as it is in every other Guardian. And in Lyath, you don't even have better options, because any of the like 2-block armor you would play gets halved. So
yeah. You don't think the draft common's better?
I don't even know what that does.
It's like the belly, whatever it's called. Let me find it.
All right, we're really going down some digressions here.
Yeah, whatever. It's the it's the reviled Guardian one. Superslam. It is equipment. We'll search this way. It is strong stomach for adversity.
Sure. It's barely ever on.
Sure.
You don't even always want to be using it on the turns it is active. So Yeah.
That makes sense. It seems like it's like maybe a Silver Edge card, but like probably just not good enough for like things like Syndra or Dio.
Yeah.
All right, and then lastly, you have the Attention Grabbers from the Pleiades Armory deck.
Yeah. Attention Grabbers is actually an incredible card in this deck. It reads like it's a downside that you have to remove a suspense counter on it, but in reality, like once per game, being able to line up your suspense auras or get in the palm of your hand off early, or in the late game when you like can't afford to wait 2 turns for your suspense aura to do anything, having it have immediate impact. It's a huge amount of upside to advance one of your suspense auras 1 turn, and having that on like the only 3-block piece of equipment you can play is just gravy.
Yeah, that's sick. It's like it actually gives you like a bit of a fridge, despite Lyath's downside. It seems really powerful.
Right.
All right. So that's kind of our equipment here. We have like an Arcane Lantern and a Skullcap, which I'm assuming like Lantern is something for like Runeblade Acilio, and then Skullcap is for slot matchups.
Yeah. Lantern or gloves, depending on the matchup, can be okay. Against like Acilio, I'll usually play AB2 on Lantern plus gloves. If you know their spells, you can play Skullcap, but in the dark, Two-Faced is so good against aggro. But even as the aggro, having AB2 is good.
Sure.
Otherwise, whether you want to swap out your gloves or shield for the AB1 is sort of a matchup call. Usually, against anything aggressive, Rampart is too important, and so I'll usually swap the gloves out, but there are some exceptions.
Sure, that makes sense. All right, let's get into the main deck here. We kind of have a variety of buffs here in the red slot. So we have buff. It's kind of crazy that like I feel like Pleiades was the Guardian that was advertised to be the suspense or a Guardian, and Lyath uses them all better.
Yes, it is a little goofy, but the main thing is that suspense auras can like convert your 5 hard hands well. Like the sort of fundamental deal with Lyath is that your math makes all of the bottom numbers on your cards irrelevant, and you really just care about the numbers that are in the middle of the cards. And the suspense auras have reasonable rate and always convert on the middle of their cards. On top of that, the suspense auras sort of play into the more combo plan side of the deck. Part of the like how you beat fatigue or hyper defensive decks with this deck is that you go into a like combo setup plan where you try and take off turns, leave your opponent struggling to convert 4 or 5 card hands while you set up huge turns to push damage. And the suspense auras play really well into that.
That makes sense. So you're just like setting up edges, leave them hangings, and like cruel ambitions to finish them with like a battered, beaten, and broken. Cut a long story short.
Yeah, and the other piece the other reason that the suspense auras go so well in Lyath is 2 steps ahead. 2 steps ahead is just like solid rate, plus it guarantees evasion, and it also playing a 2 steps ahead the same turn as your suspense aura. They will go off at the same time. So the pattern you want to get into when you're setting up for your big turn is on your turn, you want to develop a suspense aura plus 2 steps ahead. Then again on your opponent's turn, if you can, play an instant speed suspense aura with your new hand that will line up on the same turn, trying to convert everything into one giant confidence attack.
Yeah, confidence is fucked. It is like absolutely feels illegal to like put a 20 plus damage turn on like cut a long story short for confidence, just like going up plus 14 value.
Yes. I'll tell one PT story from the last round.
Sure.
The last round was sort of my like still playing live for cash, round 15, and I was paired into an Ira. And all tournament, I had been like trying to make Taka big game work, but it just hadn't been lining up. I'd been playing against a lot of aggressive decks, and like the 2 times that I did go for it against like DGA and Guardian, I got blown out by huge defense reactions. And then finally, very last CC round against Ira, I managed to put Talk a Big Game for 12 on a confident power play from Arsenal for 20. And my opponent like tanked for a minute and like just like it's like, yeah, sure, put 2 4 defense D reacts in front of it. And it's like, that's the exact calculation. Confidence like lets you do that exact calculation where it's like the most this Ira can ever put in front of this is 8.
Yeah.
And I know that for a fact. And so I'm free to name 12 here and get the full 12 value.
Because I guess you don't see too many on like Unmovable or like Oasis Respite to kind of stop you there.
Yeah, it's like possible if they're playing some really goofy hyper fatigue thing, but
sure, if things are kind of stock standard, it's pretty easy to line up. Makes sense. How does Razor Reflex play in a deck like this? I guess it's kind of like very similar to your Snapdragons.
Yeah, it's when it's good, it's so good. It can do everything from like push your on hits over the top, getting people like a surprise short shrift hit, a surprise battered, beaten, and broken being pushed through can be really devastating.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, like you said, it also converts hands. It lets you do all of those same plays that we talked about, Snapdragon Scalers again. However, it is a 1-cost 3-pump buff that only goes on your attacks. It can be a liability sometimes. That's the reason I'm not playing 3. The other really uncomfortable piece is that 2-block non-actions are a huge liability in Lyath. Because your hero text has the defense of every card, but the activated ability only buffs the defense of actions, Razor Reflex always blocks 1, even if you activate your hero power.
Ooh.
So it is like it is effectively a no block in this deck.
Yeah.
Which is really rough.
Okay, so it's high upside, but like just awful on defense.
Right. And it also, like, this deck does have issues with I'm only playing so many attacks, and you can't put Razor Reflex on Lion Claw Maul. As much as from the art I wish it could be a Hammer Dagger, it is not. So there are some times where you draw Razor Reflex and it's just a stone brick in your hand.
Sure, so there's like 18 legal targets out of 60 cards in the deck. You're drawing 5 cards.
Yep.
So it's like you should have a target for it, but not always.
Yes.
Revolting Gesture, I think, is a fairly new addition. I remember that Oliver Berry and Jason Rolfe didn't play these cards, but I'm assuming this got added with the Lion Claw Maul.
Yes, exactly. So the same thing that I talked about with Razor Reflex of like bricking if you don't draw attacks. The reason that I've shifted to Revolting Gesture and Villainous Pose as the main other front pumps is because they can go on every attack in the deck and they can go on your weapon. And so being able to, in a pinch, convert no attack hands that still have Revolting Gesture or Villainous Pose is really nice. The cost curve also lines up really well with your weapon. Revolting Gesture plus a blue on Lion Claw Maul is a perfectly fine, I needed to block 3 cards, these are me converting the last 2 cards in my hand turn.
Yeah, it's a 2-card 6 that if it hits, it's 2-card 7.
Yeah. And anytime you're playing like on rate in Lyath, it's incredible. 5 intellect is a huge piece of power.
Yeah.
And practically, if you can convert all your cards to the like 3 value per card, you should win most matchups handily.
Yeah. 15 value a turn's it's a tough number to beat.
Exactly.
So I'm guessing that's why we have cards like Sigil and Cruel. They're just like, it's a 0-cost 3 that just always converts with 3.
Yes, that's part of the logic for Sigil, for sure. Sigil also, I found, plays like really nicely into the like on-turn, off-turn patterns you want to be doing sometimes. Just being able to buy yourself a little extra space when you have full tempo and are setting up can be really important. And similarly, Cruel Ambition, part of the thing is that it always converts for 3, but it also gives you some more of that setup power as well, right? I talked about the pattern before of 2 steps ahead plus suspense aura into another suspense aura.
Yep.
Cruel Ambition also lines up really well into that second turn. It's really tempting to just jam this the first time you see it, but practically, like, it's even better if you can arsenal it alongside your 2 steps ahead and play it the next turn and keep lining up that one huge power turn.
Sure. Just kind of like the sum of the parts are greater when you can put them all together. Yeah, it's like every time
there's also some extra utility with Battered, Beaten, and Broken. Again, like being able to play Cruel Ambitions, Battered, Beaten, Broken as a like good 2-card take back tempo option is really valuable.
Yeah, that makes sense. Villainous Pose is a staple. It's a 2-card 5 that lets you extend your hand. Incredible. And all these are kind of these buffs that you're doing, and like kind of everything you're doing is always leaving behind tokens that seem to kind of fulfill all these conditions, like Escalate Violence. One card I'm curious about is I think it was Goon Beatdown. I remember seeing that a lot early on. Was it just like below rate and couldn't quite make the cut, or like what are your thoughts on that?
It's a fine card. I could totally see playing it in place of one of the other attacks if you wanted more blues in your deck. It's really just a space issue. Every other card in the deck is doing something more important than that, and so there's not space left over. It's very much on the 61st through 70th card that I could be playing, but I'm not.
Perfect, that makes sense. Yeah, it just seems like it's kind of like the best of that cycle for Super Slams. I was just curious if that's kind of as kind of we get these better cards in, it gets cut out. And then we have kind of our set of yellow attacks here. Everything gets kind of pumped if you have a pump on it, which is kind of a great way to get around the Lyath effects. I think I've always kind of seen these 3, but talk to me more about Spew Obscenities, because I feel like that's an underrated card in this deck.
Spew Obscenities I was really low on before the Talk a Big Game unban. I really only started playing this once Talk a Big Game got unbanned, in part because if you can set up Talk a Big Game Spew Obscenities on your Giant Confidence turn, it keeps carrying over, right?
Yeah.
If you can line up one of those like guaranteed evasive 10 plus Talk a Big Game turns on Spew Obscenities, suddenly you're rolling into another plus 10 confidence turn, which is usually game winning.
Yeah. Is this more of like a pipe dream, or is this something you feel like you're able to bitch stack and kind of set up these back-to-back turns?
I don't think that I often get the opportunity to really like play to pitch stack that long. For a few reasons. One is Imposing Visages shuffle the deck a lot, and so like I don't usually find myself in opportunities to line up the exact pitch stack I want. And the other piece is that a lot of times decks in the current format don't really give you space or time to do it. This is not that defensive of a deck, and so you sort of just have to take the cards as you see them.
Sure.
The other piece with Spew Obscenities is that it's like fine even in the fail case, right? It's a slight upgrade to a Hammer Swing that also leaves a Might token behind, which is just fine in a pinch.
Sure, that makes sense. One thing I remember, I've getting people in draft or limit like sealed by activating Lyath with the this effect out and just like pumping it up with like effectively just lunging pressing it by like making the Might instant speed is so sick.
Yes, if people are not paying attention, they can get got that way. A mutual friend of ours did get got in the Pro Tour when I played them.
That happens.
With a Mocking Blow that way.
Unlucky. Yeah, that's really brutal in Mocking Blow, especially. Because like, if you can, because like, I think the cost curve lines up well where you can go like Mocking Blow, activate Lyath, raise a reflex, and then do something else afterwards. That seems kind of brutal.
Yep. Absolutely. And the fact that you can just hero power to turn on Mocking Blow is a lot of what makes it playable. It's great whenever you can line up a full 6 value Mocking Blow, but there's a lot of times in this deck where you just like are getting booed passively for some other reason or activating Lyath, and it's just a 0 card 5, which is also fine.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably more than fine.
Or 0 cost 5.
Yeah. Just having a 1 card 5 is crazy. So we have a bit of a supporting cast here. How has Booze felt? I feel like this is just like a card that just will always be Lyath.
Yes, it's so flexible. It does so much. It enables all your things that need you to have might. It boos you for Mocking Blow. It converts for 2 value always offensively on a 0 cost blue. It's 2 auras for battered, beaten, and broken. It does everything. And it also blocks 3 as well.
Yeah, no, that seems crazy. How has Concealed Object felt? And like, what's your biggest blowout with this card?
It's fine. It's similarly to Booze, it's a 0 cost that converts for 2 value, and the upside here is that you sometimes get people by surprise, but it is also a no block and can be a liability sometimes. Having 1 has felt like the right number because you get people sometimes, but you never have to worry about drawing too many of them and like suddenly your hand can't block.
Sick. All right, so you talked a fair bit about Escalate Violence already. I have Ophidia. I know there's a bit of a hot discussion around Fables and how powerful they are on this deck, but I haven't seen too many people play I in Lyath. Is this required?
Yeah. I think 1 blue Fable is pretty free in Lyath because you always want to be activating your hero power even on blocking turns. Like, you always want to at least pitch 3 when you're blocking. So there's no real downside to having a no-block blue resource in the deck. On top of that, I plays really well towards the combo plan. It lets you find pieces of the deck, and it also plays very nicely within the palm of your hand, guaranteeing both the immediate draw or setting up one that's going off next turn to like try and find a specific card. I very much won a game that was super close in the Pro Tour because I had an Eye of Ophidia opt into the turn that in the palm of your hands was going off, so that the very last card that could make the hand of Terra Sunder, the blue left over in my hand, and the short shrift that I opted to the top of my deck won me a game. And it's really powerful for that reason. It also just, helps line up your next turn, helps you make sure you're converting turns, helps you find your power pieces. I think I have seen, like, the Rolf list I talked about was playing Heart of Fyendal in that spot, which I think could also be a fine inclusion. But when I tried them out, I liked I a lot.
Makes sense. So it's a nice upgrade, but you don't feel like it's like a make or break card for the deck.
Nah. If you can't afford an eye, you can just put an extra concealed object or any of those other blues we've talked about in that slot, and it'll probably be fine.
Sure, that makes sense. So, like, if we cut eye from the deck, I'm just kind of curious. Most expensive. So if we cut eye, sorry, not that. It is cheapest in deck order, high to low. This is basically what, like a $400 deck without eye?
Sounds right.
Yeah, and if you already have a Tunic, it's like $300. So it's like one of the cheapest decks you could be playing right now. So it's like a good budget consideration, and has like a long LL runway for them.
Especially if you are a Guardian player, like most of that cost that's left over from there is in the Guardian staples. Sure. Like, Imposing Visage, Terra Sunder are some decent chunk of that.
Yeah, I guess Talk a Big Game now is pretty expensive.
Sure.
Which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
All right, so how often is Imposing Visage always getting 2 steps ahead?
No. Sometimes you already have a 2 steps ahead in your hand,
Mhm.
in which case it gets edge of their seats.
Gotcha. Okay, that's fair.
There are a few other cute plays, like I'm being a little flip there. Sometimes you will get booze to enable your battered, beaten, and broken. Sometimes if you don't have enough blues, you can get 2 steps ahead on the same turn.
Mhm.
If you are really desperate, you can find it in the palm of your hand to dig.
Sure.
But I would say it's like 70% of the time I'm getting 2 steps ahead. The other 25% I'm getting edge of their seats.
Cool. That makes sense. Power play is a card I don't feel like I hear much talked about, but it seems like such an absolute house in Lyath.
Yep. It's really important for a lot of the grindier and more defensive decks in particular. There's almost nothing else that Lyath can play that converts that big and that efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
It also lines up really well with Craterhoof, and it is another nice big Guardian attack to put Terra Sunders on.
Sure.
So especially like when you do start getting way late into the bottom of your deck, being able to arsenal a power play to line up one last big attacking turn can be very, very important to closing the game.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because it's like it also just like a 2-card 6 for Lyath is great. Like we were talking about,
Yes.
If you can convert like your cards for 3. This seems awesome. Like this wears Terra Sunder super well. Doing anything else with it. Yeah, no, it's kind of a bummer you can't raise or reflex it, but everything else lines up really well with this card.
Yes. Yeah.
We've talked a lot about Talk a Big Game already, but do you feel like it's kind of like taking you like above like a 50% win rate, or like how much like lift has Talk a Big Game given the deck?
It's definitely helped. I think it in particular has helped out a lot against the slower grindier decks in this version of the list. It really lets you play towards that combo game plan of if you can line up a Talk a Big Game with your giant confidence turn, it usually wins you the game on the spot. And I think it's gotten a lot of equity there. The other use case that I continue to be pretty impressed with is naming a big but blockable number against aggressive decks is very, very valuable and has bought a lot of equity in those matchups.
Mm-hmm.
Again, while we're doing like Pro Tour stories, I won one game against Fi in large part by lining up a Talk a Big Game naming 7 on a 20 card attack or a 20 power attack.
Yeah.
And that's like immediately just put my opponent in the tank of like, am I really going to, as Fi, fold my entire hand plus Shuko and Mask of the Pouncing Lynx? Or am I going to let my opponent get a 0 for 7 for free? Like, neither of those is a good option, and both of them probably would have won me the game.
Yeah, so kind of using it as a way to strip, like, because like Pouncing Lynx is often 5, and Shuko is over the course of a game, 5 or 6.
Yeah,
that's sick. If you're able to kind of strip armor that way. So you feel like so it's kind of giving you a little bit of equity. You said it's mainly giving you equity into like defensive matchups, but also just like helps a bit in aggro as well.
Yeah. The other thing too is like you don't need it. I think I also often find myself in spots where I just need to command you name 1 or 2 on an attack and like a full block, or do you want to just let me convert the last card in my hand for 2 value?
Yeah, that's pretty reasonable. And then I think the last card we really need to talk about is Terra Sunder, which is like I think it's gonna be a Guardian staple forever. I don't think I want to play a Guardian deck that doesn't play Terra Sunder.
Yeah, it's huge. It's an important piece of the disruptive suite. I think one of the things that we've glossed over a little bit, we've talked a lot about the sort of like combo strategies for dealing with defensive decks, but a huge part of the plan into aggressive decks is to play a more disruptive mid-range strategy. Between Battered, Beaten, and Broken, Cut a Long Story Short, Short Shrift, Tear Asunder, and drawing 5 cards per turn, it's very easy to chain big disruptive attacks against those heroes and really keep them off balance. Tear Asunder especially lines up really well with Short Shrift. If you can put those 2 cards together against decks that don't block well, they're sort of like... They're either blocking 1 card and folding their entire hand, or they are no blocking and discarding 3 cards, and both of those are incredible outcomes.
Yeah, you seem like you're just like... It's kind of like a 3 for... Or like every time you like hit them, you basically strip half their hand or more so rather. That's sick. Cool. So when you brought this list to the Pro Tour, what were the decks you were looking to see?
As I said before, that like disruptive package has me feeling very confident against a lot of the aggressive decks that I was seeing around, especially more combo-oriented decks like Acilio and Phi.
Mm-hmm.
The combination of Two-Faced, Leave Them Hanging, plus all of the disruptive aggressive attacks had me feeling like I was winning those matchups very consistently. And that's, I think, the upside of this version of the list that is playing a more mid-range combo plan. I have seen a lot of people who have gone really all in on trying to make Talk a Big Game work, playing like the huge Intimidate packages and stuff like that. And I think those decks' real issue is that while they can be good at pushing damage against decks that can't block, those decks struggle to race against an aggressive deck. And instead, I think this more disruptive mid-range / combo plan is a little bit better against a heavy aggro field.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. And if you're able to kind of like figure out these more defensive game plans, like with getting into the sideboard here, cards like Exude Confidence, I think it kind of gives you your other half of the matchup spread as kind of Jarl's really risen up these last couple of months.
Yeah, it's... So I should say the way that the deck is structured is that the default like main deck configuration here is sort of your generic mid-range plan against decks that you don't super need to block against, but you also don't think can block you out all that well. I would very much play this main deck into something like Puffin or Rhinar, decks like that, where you don't really want to be blocking, but you don't think they can block all that well either. Exude Confidence out of the sideboard comes in against every Guardian, against every Fatigue deck, against anything where you think they want to try and block you out, and it can be a huge blowout. It plays so well on your giant confidence turns, keeping your opponent from playing their staunch responses or other big defense reacts, unmovables, whatever they have, and lets you really push final damage over the top. It also works really well late game, giving you some way of converting all of the blues left in your deck.
Yeah.
Being able to play it out as like off of a couple might tokens from Arsenal with 5 blues in hand and just sending like one last 14-point attack can really help close games, especially when that attack can't be blocked by defense reactions.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because it's basically like effectively like a pulverize. If you just like have this in Arsenal and you just pitch like your 5 blues, that's 6. So that's what 10. Yeah, okay. So if you have like it's 12, and then if you have mites, it's whatever added on top of that. Yeah, that's exactly. Great deck damage. Oasis, is that mainly for like spell Cilio, or do you feel like you can just use Oasis kind of with the way your cost curve functions?
Yeah, the latter more. It's really there first and foremost for decks where you do need a little bit of D-React, like defensive help. Anything that has really threatening on-hits, Mario, Katsu, Dori, any of those types of decks. And similarly to same way that Rampart plays well into your defensive cost curve, you can often just slot Oasis into that same spot. There's also plenty of times, like if you can line it up with a Tunic counter, it lets you play really efficient 1-card defense when this deck otherwise can't do that. It also helps a lot in matchups like Mario being able to cover a tarantula toxin threat right now is super valuable.
I mean, if you line this up like at its best, off a Tunic in your lower life, it's a 1 card 5 is crazy for a deck that's running 5 cards.
Right. When like this deck struggles to get 1 card 3 on defense.
Yeah. That's sick. All right, that's something I'll want to kind of play around with a bit. A 1 of Midas Touch. I assume this is for gravy.
Yeah. This what I'm presenting here is the list that I sort of tested around with at the Pro Tour. I didn't run up against any gravies there. I don't think this plan is necessarily all that good against them. The Midas Touch plus Sense Weakness was the idea. Practically, I don't actually think the Sense Weaknesses are worth it, and would just squeeze a second Midas Touch in. Really, the main thing this is for is Chum. It sucks to give your opponent 4 gold, but it sucks even more to have your opponent activate Chum on your buff on a 20 attack turn. And so this is really just a bailout to stop them from being able to do that.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's pretty brutal to say, like, all right, cool, just discard 1 card 20.
Yeah.
Sick. All right. Overcrowded. Seems like it's a... I mean, honestly, with how many tokens you make, I feel like this is just kind of a pretty playable card in Lyath.
Yep. Yeah, it's fine to slot in as your last blue. In, like, sometimes against in-fatiguey matchups, you don't actually care about your life total all that much, and so Sigil of Solace comes out, and you're happy to just slot in Overcrowded as an extra blue. And it does have the utility everybody knows against Mario. Also, like, bring it in as an extra blocking card in against aggressive decks that make tokens.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, you always have a might. If your opponent is making fealty or is making any token on their side of the board, Overcrowded is usually pretty good.
Yeah, this seems sick in a Warrior or in a, like, Syndra.
Yep.
Yeah, all right. You talked about Sense Weakness already. But are there any more kind of cards here in your maybe board you're looking to kind of bring in?
Yeah, I've been playing around with a few things since the Pro Tour, continuing to like tune the deck and chatting with some people. I think the few things that I'm actively looking at now are bringing in at least 1 or 2 more Suspense Auras to really help close out those grindy defensive matchups. I think 1 or 2 tension in the air, or maybe an Act of Glory could help a lot there. There's also some other tools you can consider for those matchups. Full of Bravado has come in and out, and I found to be another nice way to like sneak in a little bit of extra confidence, but it's a little hard to line up.
Sure.
The one thing I've been testing that isn't included here, and I maybe should put in, is Captain's Call, blue, as a like extra buff and way to convert hands. I think that it's a nice extra piece of utility where it's not as great of a rate as like Minnowism would be if you wanted to play a buff for just your attacks, but it gives you a lot of extra flexibility in that it can pitch, and that it can also help you convert those awkward double Mocking Blow hands, or it can let you play an attack that uses all your buffs and get your 2 steps ahead out, right? Captain's Call to give go again and play your 2 steps ahead is sort of the same as pitching a blue to Imposing Visage.
That's sick. All right. Let's see. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Lyath, or should we look to wrap things up here?
I think one thought I do just want to say going forward is that like this deck will break out at some point. This hero will break out at some point and be scary. 5 Intellect is just such an absurd baseline piece of power that whenever like the deck gets a critical density of cards that are still powerful and can deal with having 5 Intellect, this will become an obnoxious deck. I think it's sort of just a matter of when, and until then, I think it's going to be a pretty solid role player. We've talked before comparing this deck to Azalea in a lot of ways. It's a very similar principle of you're just sort of trying to send giant souped up evasive, disruptive attacks at your opponent. And I think it can play a lot of the same metagame role that Azalea used to, of beating up on decks that can't block out those big pieces of disruption.
Absolutely. I mean, dominated Red and Ledgers seems pretty similar to dominated Confidence. Cut a long story short.
Yep. Like pattern wise, they play very similar.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the time, Josh. Is there anything you'd like to promote while you're here?
No in particular promotes. I'm not a huge, social media person. I don't have a ton of presence out there. I will say it's been a really cool part of being in the local Bay Area scene. I do just want to shout out that this community has been great, has given me a huge amount of testing and ability to learn. And I don't think I would have, gotten to the point where I was confident bringing something like this to a Pro Tour and being able to cash with it without a lot of fantastic people in our local community.
I know we've played this into Guardian just back and forth a lot, several times a week, just playing these full 55-minute rounds. So it's cool to see the testing pay off and for you to cash events.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you guys soon.